I just got done watching The Son, starring the likes of Hugh Jackman, Vanessa Kirby, and Laura Dern, and it's directed by Florian Zeller and written by Christopher Hampton, based on a play by Florian Zeller. Now, Florian Zeller's name might sound familiar because this guy directed Anthony Hopkins to a brand new Best Actor win within the movie The Father, and personally for me, I loved The Father. I saw that movie out of a whim. I was at Sundance, and someone was like, I have this free ticket. Do you just want to go see it? It's the brand new Anthony Hopkins movie. I'm like, sure, I have 2.5 hours to kill. I might as well go see another movie while I'm at a film festival, and I loved The Father. It was incredible. In fact, I had to sit on that movie, and then I finally got to revisit it like months later, around November or December, once it finally came out, and I was like, yeah, this movie's excellent. And for me, when it comes down to The Son, I was so excited because you get Hugh Jackman teaming up with Florian Zeller, and I'm like, oh my god, is this the chance that Hugh Jackman could actually win Best Actor at the Oscars? Well, this year's pretty stacked, so I don't know if he'll even get nominated, and I do have a lot of issues with The Son, but I will say that how do I put it? I didn't hate this movie. I didn't love this movie. I can kind of understand why people hate this movie, and I can see why people would love this movie. But I'm very mixed on this film from a ton of different elements of it. And I think this is a movie that I'm very excited to have discussions with people who have actually seen the movie. In fact, leaving the theater, I got to talk to one of the critics out here, a critic that I find to be a friend. And talking with him and hearing his thoughts were interesting. And then I never do this, but I went and read other reviews before filming this because I wanted to see other people's thoughts. And overall, I feel very in the middle of everyone. Like, I'm just very in the middle in feeling this movie because initially walking out, I'm like, yeah, I didn't like that movie. But then sitting on it, I'm like, I kind of like it a little bit. Like, there's so many fascinating and great elements to this movie that I was actually really surprised by, and that's where I'm excited to talk about this movie. So make sure to leave your thoughts down below as hitting that like and subscribe button, because over here I talk movies every day on a daily basis, and I'm excited to hear your guys' thoughts. Now, as I'm filming this, it is in December. I know this movie doesn't premiere till January, which I think is around the time where this review is actually going to go up. So if you're watching this in January, give this movie or at least this review, some love. But diving into this, what is The Son about? It's about Peter, played by Hugh Jackman, who has a busy life with his new partner Beth and their brand new baby. After being thrown into disarray when his ex-wife Katie shows up with their teenage son Nicholas, and Nicholas is kind of acting out in a bit, and what we end up finding out is that Nicholas is suffering from depression. Now, just as a point of context, I'm not going to get a little bit too deep into this because I just don't feel like getting that personal in this type of video, but I've dealt with depression. I dealt with depression for about 1.5 to 2 years. And I have 2 friends who really dealt with depression for countless years. And I'm really not going to get into that because that's some emotional territory right there that I'm not trying to get crying and tearing on the camera. But I was interested to see how Florian Zeller was going to present that, because obviously we saw in The Father what he presented there. And from there, watching this movie, I think the thing that a lot of us need to understand going into this is that depression looks very different to a ton of different people. And in the way that you might reflect that, and that you may put that out there, and how you might handle depression, or maybe how your depression handled you. Everyone handles it in a completely different manner. So some things in this movie I felt were a little bit shallow and hollow to it all, to be honest. I think the movie could have had better lengths to certain things, as it does get a little bit repetitive in the early parts of it, and I wish to the build-up, this emotional build-up that it gets to, that you do see coming, specifically in the way that the film is structured, I wish there were certain things that the film actually dealt with a little bit more, and I'm going to talk about that. But with every movie review, I do like starting with the pros a bit. I had to get that out of the way before we dive into this movie review a little bit more. And I want to really say this, is that I think this is one of Hugh Jackman's best performances, if not his best one. And personally for me, I found Logan to be his best one, but there is something to him in here that I truly was in love with. And I think for me, Hugh Jackman really excels in being a father who does not understand what depression is. And I think that's probably something that a lot of parents go through nowadays when they just don't understand what's going on with their kids. And I think really much Hugh Jackman is going through there. And Laura Dern, playing his ex-wife in here, is also in the same category of understanding this too. And seeing both their struggles, definitely it's more from Hugh Jackman's perspective, but I really loved seeing both of their perspectives, and I think both their performances are actually really great. Vanessa Kirby at the same time too, I don't think gets too much to do in this movie playing the new wife. I wish they gave her a little bit more to do, because again, I think there are interesting themes to play on there with being this kind of outsider to everyone, in a sense, and specifically this family issue, but being right in the middle of it. And what she's given, she's great. I mean, she is one of the best actresses working right now. Pieces of a Woman is still one of the best films that I saw that year, and I still think she should have won. But again, all three of them are fantastic. Anthony Hopkins as well, stellar. He's only in the movie for about 5-6 minutes, but his one scene is so important to the rest of the movie that without it, this movie would honestly mean nothing. I really want to focus on that because I think what this movie does so well, and what Florian Zeller does really well in here, and this is the one thing I'll give to the themes and the thematics of it all, is truly enough the parallels of father-son and the kind of the breakdown and leading then down that, and how maybe we want to be better than our father or someone in our family who raised us and maybe didn't give us the best, but you try to grow upon that and maybe you just can't elevate yourself enough to that. And again, I was fascinated by that. I was fascinated to see how Florian Zeller was able to really touch on that, and that one scene between Hugh Jackman and Anthony Hopkins in the movie was one of the most important in the entire film. Now, this is where I want to get down into my mixed category before I start really diving into my cons. Now, as you can clearly tell, I think the performances are actually the lifesavers of this. But this movie's called The Son. I haven't talked about the actor yet who has played the son, who is Zen McGrath. Now, I've never seen Zen in anything before. I've never seen him in anything. So this is the first time I've ever seen him, and I found his performance to be just okay. Now, I don't know if I can fully blame his performance, and honestly, I would not have done a better job, but I also have some issues when it comes down to Florian Zeller's directing. Sometimes it feels a little bit aimless and really not fully there. It feels like this kind of was his cakewalk to kind of go through and just let the performances shine, where in all honesty, like looking back at The Father, the reason that movie really works is because how it feels like a stage play, but constantly moving and shifting parts with a fantastic performance. And I think what Florian was able to do there was elevate the themes that it wanted to talk in there, and I didn't feel like his direction really at all elevated anything here. And I guess that's actually more of a con than a mixed aspect, but let me focus a little bit more on Zen McGrath's performance because it is mixed for me. There are some sequences in here where I think he's absolutely phenomenal. I'm buying completely everything this kid is going through and that I can completely relate to. And then again, this kind of also goes in part of the writing, which we'll talk about, but there's times where I didn't believe what he was saying, or that he was in pain or in depression. And again, depression looks a lot different for everyone. Maybe in the way that Zen portrayed it in this film is more of how you've gone through it, or maybe a friend has gone through it. But for me, it was never like that all too much. Besides a couple different instances, which I don't want to get into because of spoilers, which were the moments that I actually thought were great. But overall, again, I can't tell if it's Zen's performance or more of the writing and the directing that kind of failed him. And maybe it's kind of hand in hand on all things. Because again, I think he's a good actor. It's just, when you're going up against Hugh Jackman, I expected a little bit more right then and there. But I will say is great between the performance between Zen, Laura Dern, and of course Hugh Jackman is, oh my god, they have great chemistry. And you really do believe that there was a family, because out of all the sequences in this movie and everything that kind of takes place here, there's these flashbacks that really add to a lot of context with them, everything that's kind of going on in the now. And those flashbacks were very meaningful for me and really hit hard. And I love how Florian actually touched on those. I thought that was, again, one of the best aspects. But I keep tiptoeing around it, so let's talk about my issues really with this movie and how, again, I think the two words that I can describe this movie is shallow and hollow. I found that a lot in this movie just did not go to the lengths that I feel like it should have. And it kind of just aimlessly walks through everything that you would expect and see through depression. It goes through the medication and what medication can do and being locked up and certain things like that. And again, interesting ideas that you should elevate and touch on a little bit more. Touching on parents who are dealing with their son who has depression. Maybe they don't know or even understand what causes someone to be sad like that, and they've never dealt with that at all in their life. Again, interesting themes. They do really well in that. In fact, everything, I won't even shit on that. Like, I won't even give a con to that. That's actually the best theme that they touch on in this movie. But it goes on and on from there to where I kind of started to get a little bit frustrated and antsy because they were being repetitive, which again, understandable. And I actually think this movie could have been longer to elevate certain scenes like these, but it gets a little bit repetitive for certain instances of how characters are feeling, what characters are doing, and I would have liked if they really doubled down on certain elements with the family and of course with the medical procedures and certain things that they try to do for people who are depressed. And again, a lot of great ideas, just not executed completely. And I mentioned also the word aimless. The direction really didn't feel like it was really going anywhere. It always did this cycle, and it leads to the most obvious ending that you could possibly see. And I'm not saying that I needed some happy-go-lucky ending here. It is a very hard film to watch at times, but it is a movie that kind of just struck me in the wrong way in certain categories in the way that it tackled certain elements. But I will go as far to say that I think the only thing this movie really did great was make me like this family and make me interested to see a little bit more of them. And I actually wanted to learn a little bit more of them. Again, that's another one of my things. I understand this is based on a play, but that's where adaptions need to be really sorted out. And it kind of just plants you in the middle of the story and you feel like you're playing catch up a lot of the time. So maybe I'm just getting nitpicky at that point, but I think The Son is not as bad as a lot of people are saying, nor do I think it's as great as some people have been saying. I'm very mixed on this movie. I think the performances are great. I think the cast, really much the family element is there. The parallels between father and son are great. The way that the parents don't understand how depression works. And I think some elements of depression are really fascinating here and honestly tackled in a great manner. But then a lot of other elements feel very shallow, hollow, and overall just empty and feels like it was aimlessly walked through instead of actually providing great direction. And when you're talking about a film with depression where a lot of people go through depression in their life, this is a movie that I feel like needed a little bit more care to it all. And I think what Florian tried to do was more just direct the actors to their all might, where I think everything else around it, not saying the production design or anything was bad, but more of what they were trying to do and tell in this story. And specifically, I think the script really lets them down in that department. So I'm mixed. I'm really, really mixed, but I'm excited to hear your guys' thoughts nonetheless. So with all that said, I'm going to give The Son a C. Thank you so much again, guys, for watching this. You guys are really the best. Make sure to leave your thoughts down below. Hit that like and subscribe button. And of course, until next time, stay classy.